What is up, everybody? Episode 57 of the Patio Slave podcast. It's Anthony here. I'm here, as always, week after week, month after month, with Tony and Nate. Fellas, what's going on? You guys good?
What's up? Yeah, I'm great.
Yeah, the trifecta, the nerd trifecta.
The Triforce, right? If this was a video game, it'd be the Triforce. So what do we got going on this week? We got something cool planned, right?
We just finished a almost 2.5 hour conversation with a couple of buddies. Now the whole thing isn't recorded. Don't worry. This is only going to be a little over an hour. But yeah, we just talked to two of the boys from Trawl, Sean Matthews, vocalist, and Seth McClellan, the bassist. They also do a podcast called the Trawlcast. They're local Portland, Maine area funk metal. So I've known Sean now for just about 20 years. We grew up working in a similar mini mall in South Portland, Maine, and then we worked at the same shoe store right after we met. So I've known Sean since I think he was 19 and I was 17 when we met. So it was funny how we met this way. Seth found us originally, which is cool, and then told Sean that he had talked to us, and I was like, yeah, hey, I know Sean. Tell him Tony from Sports Shoe said hi, and you'll hear that. It's funny. It was a fun conversation. Those guys are cool. They do a couple of different things that we're into, and this is our conversation with those guys. If you like what you hear tonight, please check us out on the social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter at PatioSlave, and Gmail. You can email us at Gmail, patioslavepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. All right, I'm here. We're here with Seth and Sean from the band Trawl. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
Doing great.
Happy to have you guys tonight. Pretty excited. We've been kind of, pun intended, circling each other for a couple of weeks now, so it's exciting to actually sit down and do it. And actually, Sean and I go way back. I've known Sean for the better part of 20 years. We worked together at a shoe store when we were both, young lads back in our late teens. And Sean, I'm gonna bring you back to a night. There was a night when you weren't working there yet. You were working next door at the food place, the pasta place, right?
Fresh Market Pasta, yeah.
Fresh Market Pasta, yep. You were working there, and some guy came in maybe 15, 20 minutes before we closed and proceeded to tell me he was going to take a bunch of stuff and pay me at a later date, or don't worry about it, I'm stealing this. And I was trying to get your attention because I was being robbed. And I was like, Sean, call the police, man.
Holy shit. Yeah, and I was trying to get my coworker, Ben at the time. Yep. He was in the store, and I was like, dude, call the cops. And he's like, I ain't no snitch. I'm like, I don't fucking care if you are. Call the fucking cops. And I think it was either us or the people next door, the CVS or something, that got a hold of the cops. But I remember that night. That was funny because you're like I see the guy in there and you're just kind of waving your hands like, hey, call. And I'm like, we want me to fucking call you, dude? Like, what the hell are you doing?
I'm 17. I don't know any better. I'm not trying to get shot. I don't know what this guy's got on him. My coworker was hanging out. He's hanging out back with a hammer.
Yeah, right. I could have come in with some fucking noodles and thrown them at him.
So long story short, he took stuff. I talked to the police for a half an hour after. I had to fill out a whole report. And then maybe 3 months later, we were working together. You come over to our place and work with us.
Yeah, they closed that pasta place down. And I was literally at the time I was living in Portland, and one of the last days, I remember our old coworker, Keith Murphy, him and I were actually in a band together back then called Brick to Face. Mm-hmm. It was a punk band. And he's like, hey man, I can get you a job at the shoe store with us. And I was like, yeah, fuck it. These guys are cool. I already know how to get here and know most of the guys that work there. So
it's true.
I pretty much walked in, and Roy, our manager, was like, yeah, you're hired. You're old enough. You can be a key holder or whatever. And I was like, okay, cool.
The robbery didn't deter you from getting the gig?
No. You know what it was? Is I saw, I'd met Tony and a bunch of the other guys had come into my restaurant, and they were all just good guys. And honestly, I was like, you know what? This place is closing. It's shit in the bed. These all guys, these all seem like good guys. Plus, I loved shoes at the time. I was 18. So I was like, fuck it. I get to go get some nice shoes. And I never told anyone this, Tony, but I used to walk around that store with a new pair of shoes every shift and just put them back in the boxes.
I believe that. I believe they were all out on the floor.
Dude, they were all on the floor. They were comfortable size 12s that, you know what? I got the best arch support in those New Balance 991s. And you know what I'm talking about, man.
I do. I may or may not have worn those around too.
I may or may not own a pair. So
that's awesome. I've never heard that story.
So thanks for coming on, guys. We obviously want to get into the music a little bit and your podcast too. So we'll start with kind of the musical come up. What did you guys listen to growing up? Seth, what did you listen to growing up that kind of got you hooked on it?
Yeah. So for me early on, I think, I think I'm probably about the same age as you guys. I'm 36. So, growing up and going to high school in like the early 2000s, kind of my epiphany where I started with music was, first probably grunge, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam. And then kind of the second epiphany was when I started listening to, like, early in high school, probably Tool, Primus, Faith No More, stuff like that. So that's kind of the wheelhouse or the foundation of things. I mean, I like so much different types of music, but those are probably like the foundational pieces that, or bands that, I kind of the jumping off point of all of the other subgenres and stuff that I listen to. So
how about you, Sean?
When I first got into music, it was kind of that early phase of like MTV when they played music videos. Like you saw everything. You saw a little bit of that early punk, like Offspring and Blink-182 and stuff like that, and like Bone Thugs and Harmony and those kind of things. So I kind of got into everything. But when I really started to form me musically, like I started to hit heavy with the punk rock stuff, Black Flag, NoFX, MXPX, stuff like that.
Nice. Kind
of morphed over the years. And I actually had a friend of mine in high school get me into stuff like Life of Agony and Fear Factory. And at that time I was like really heavy into ska. Like my number one band was Real Big Fish. So it didn't matter. Like that was the only band. And then he's like, no, man, check this band out. And, it was a Life of Agony CD, and I actually have their logo tattooed on my leg.
River Runs Red?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. Everyone thinks it's a ladybug, which is funny. And I'm like, no, trust me, it's absolutely not. But like growing more into the heavier stuff, like I started to get in, I was really heavy into Coal Chamber. Zayo was huge for me back in the day. And they still are. But then I started to kind of, as I got through high school, it started to be more like Slipknot. And some of the weirder stuff like Black Dahlia Murder was really hitting me in places I didn't know I could be hit in. So, but I listen to everything. Like if you get in my car, I'll be listening to Johnny Cash, and then I'll throw on Nappy Roots, and then I'll throw on, Dimmu Borgir. So
I think you just summed up us. I think you actually did.
I listen to literally everything. Like it's not even like they're pretty much the only thing I won't listen to is new country because it's garbage. And I've said this on our podcast a few times. Like I just don't get it. Like it's basically pop music with a little bit of twang in the voice, which doesn't make sense to me. Like give me that old school Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson, Hank Williams III, that kind of stuff's like that's real country, Yeah,
some stuff that like probably in the past 10 years that I've been more obsessed with. There's been an amazing hard rock and metal scene in Australia. There's so many amazing bands coming out of Australia that like don't always quite make it over to the States in terms of popularity, but 12 Foot Ninja is like one of my favorite bands that I'd say that definitely like Trawl has drawn some influence from, and then bands like Carnival. There's a band called Mammal that's amazing. Cog.
Don't forget Osaka Punch, man.
Osaka Punch is one that we've been on for a bit. So like, there's a lot of bands from that Australian scene that like we've just been kind of obsessed with that, are a little outside of like you're not going to hear them on radio, but just amazing bands.
Nate, you love Australia.
Love Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought you were going to move there at one point, right?
I wanted to, and I still want to, but good call on that. A lot of good music coming out of Australia, and they always seem to capture a good distillation of what was accomplished here in the States. So you have like Silverchair, right? That's like a grunge rip off, but the songs are timeless and everything. Something I was thinking about when you were talking about all the similar music that, you know, we adore too. Were you going to shows growing up, like checking out these acts in concert and so forth?
Yeah.
The first show I ever went to was Cold Chamber, Seven Dust, Life of Agony, Drain STH, and Ultraspank.
Is that a state theater show?
State theater show, yeah.
Nice.
I was a freshman in high school, so, you know, fresh baby face. I'd never seen a mosh pit before. I had never been to, like, I'd been to some local shows from my friends' bands at the time, but I went because I had a bunch of friends going, so we showed up. And this was back when Raina was still the bass player at Cold Chamber. She actually came out of the side door and was like checking out the stage, and me and my buddy were standing there and we're like, oh shit, look, it's Raina. And like we said hi, and she like waved at us and like went back in. And then my idiot buddy was like, that was awesome, and then threw me in the pit. Like I was 15, 14 years old, and he just yeeted me into the middle of this giant pit, and I had to learn real quick, like, duck and weave, you know, throw some bows and you'll get out of there alive.
So you got, so trying to date this. So this is probably late 90s ish. So are you guys playing music at this point? So Seth, are you playing bass at this point? Sean, are you singing at all?
Yeah, I started playing bass in 1999. So I would have been, I think I was a freshman in high school. I picked up a bass because I had a buddy who was already kind of playing guitar, and we wanted to start a band, and you know, he was already kind of a little bit further ahead. So I was like, you know what, I'll try bass, and it stuck. And like probably 2 or 3 months after I started playing, I joined this band. And so I've been basically playing in bands ever since, you know, kind of in and out of bands since 1999. So yeah, for me, it's just been kind of this over 20 years now. It's just been, you know, the thing that I never quit. Like, you know, there's so many things in life that have come and gone, but like, bass guitar for me has just always been that thing that I love, and I go back to anytime I'm, you know, just feeling the itch, and it's just become something that's like, you know, for me, just part of my life. It's not even like an instrument I play. It's just kind of part of my life now, you know.
For me, I played trumpet in the school band, and that's what started, because it's funny, none of my family have any musical talent whatsoever. Like at all. When my grandmother calls me on my birthday to sing happy birthday, I hang up, because she's there's tone deaf and then there's tone dead. Like she's fully like decomposed and part of the earth again with her tone. It's horrendous. But actually, no, I started in I had a friend who wanted to start a band, and I actually bought a bass guitar because I was like, yeah, I'll play bass. It can't be that hard. It's 4 strings. Yeah, and I sucked, and I learned enough to be, we were trying to be a punk band, and it didn't quite work out because the bass player was an idiot and didn't know how to play, and the drummer didn't understand what punk meant. So, and then they, you know, that band fizzled, and then the next band, I was like, I'll play bass. And they're like, okay. And our singer quit, and they were like, you know, you really suck at bass. Why don't you try singing? And so I tried singing, and that was probably at least my sophomore year of high school. So yeah, right about 98, 99, and pretty much ever since then I've been in and out of bands, doing the voice thing, the mouth noises, and yeah, it's been a long time. I've had a lot of bands that started to get bigger, and like some of them started to get ready for shows and then fizzled out. And then about 6 years ago, I got a phone call from my bass player in my other band. I'm actually in 2 bands. And he was like, hey, I got a gig. And I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And I came back and won the spot as the singer. And then fast forward 3-4 years later, Seth was getting out of something and decided he wanted to start a new gig. And I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to jam with this guy, because I've known Seth for better part of 15 years now.
Yeah, probably 15 years. Yeah.
And Seth's probably one of the most phenomenal unknown bass players that you'll ever see. Just watching him, I've said this 1,000 times, you can ask anybody that knows me and Seth, like I can watch him record a song. You couldn't pay me my life to tell you how he did it. I'd be like, his hands did this thing and then it sounded like that. Like, so I was like, I'm jamming with this guy. He's phenomenal. And a couple practices in, they're like, hey, you want to be our singer? And I was like, fuck yes.
Yeah, so we started up in June of 2018. So it's been almost 3 years, like just under 3 years. And as Sean was saying, we it started with myself and Gary Marston, who were in a previous band together. We were in the band Fifth Freedom together. We had recorded an album. It actually did, surprisingly really well. We had a good run for a few years, and unfortunately that band broke up. So, we were kind of left with, okay, where do we go from here? And Gary and I kind of were like, all right, rhythm section has to stick together. What can we do? What can we, I've always wanted to start my own band. I've been the second or third bass player in several bands. I was in the band Loki for over 7 years. We put out 3 albums together, but I was the second bass player in that band. And then I joined Fifth Freedom. Again, I was replacing somebody else. So I had never actually started my own project. So I decided, all right, instead of joining another project, I'm going to start my own project. And all those weird, crazy riffs, all the funky stuff that like every other band was like, I don't know, this might be a little too weird or too crazy. I'm like, this is the band for that. Right. We're going to try all the crazy ideas. We're going to just, not make it have to be or sound like anything. It might be that our sound is that we don't sound so much like any one thing, like song to song. So we started, jamming at rehearsal space. I think we brought in my buddy Tom Mishu, who was the guitar tech for Fifth Freedom, and he was a great buddy of mine and wanted to try to play guitar for Trawl, and he did for a while. He actually left the band after about a year and a half. But we had started jamming, writing some songs, and then like 2 practices in, we brought in Sean, which right away we actually, for like the audition, and Sean tells it well, but I asked Sean, I was like, can you play Them Bones by Alice in Chains and Cochise by Audioslave? And we'll try to do those 2 songs and maybe we can jam them out. And so he's like, yeah, I think I can do that. Cornell is kind of a hard, ask for like a first jam, but he nailed it.
Cornell, I've seen and met one gentleman who can be, he's close to the Cornell. Like it's almost like, dude, like 2 more years and you've got it. Like you were totally Chris Cornell, tonally. But like these guys asked me to come in, and the first 2 songs, like Alice in Chains, Them Bones, I'm like, okay, pretty standard. It's that Lane Staley kind of monotonous, kind of drony type voice. I was like, yeah, it shouldn't be too hard. And then he's like, and Cochise by Audioslave. I'm like, you son of a bitch. Oh man. I was like, and then I literally was thinking, I'm like, they're testing me. They're absolutely testing me. There's no doubt about it. This is one of those things like, if he can't pull this off or somewhat come close, or, fuck him. And I was like, all right, I'm going in here. And I worked my ass off to do that one song. And I'd love to play it live, but
we've never played it live, which I think is kind of a tragedy, because like, I feel like we do it justice. And my favorite part of it is that you kind of bring your own thing to it. You don't try to be just like Cornell, and that's always right. What I enjoy about a band covering a song is that no band is ever probably going to do the song as good in the same way as the original band doing it, so you might as well try to do something a little bit different with it. And that's what I'm excited about, because you kind of bring your style to it. So
did you at least give Sean a heads up that's what was coming, or you just showed up to the tryout and, hey, Cochise, go for it?
No, I gave him a couple of weeks. I was like, all right, we want to jam, a couple weeks out. So you had a little bit of time. And
yeah, Seth put up a post on Facebook and was like, hey, I'm starting a project. I got a guitarist and a drummer. We're just looking for a singer and maybe just a jam for a bit. And then it turned into like, pretty steady conversation between Seth and I, like, hey, I'm actually interested. And he knew at the time I was in another band, and he'd seen me play a few times. Actually, it's funny because Seth and I met because of his band Loki many years before, and he had never really seen me perform or anything like that. It just kind of came in later on down the line. He was like, "Oh wow, you're singing, okay, cool." And then like saw me, he was like, "Dude, that was great." And I was like, "Hey, thanks." And then the conversation for the Trawl started, and it was just basically like, "Yeah, I'd love to jam with you. I think you guys, I loved Fifth Freedom. I thought it was a good, good thing. I loved Loki. Like, if you didn't love Loki when you're in the local scene, then you were clearly mentally unstable and should be, locked up." But the conversation, and he was like, "Here's your 2 songs to come in." And for like a week and a half, that's the only thing I listened to was Cochise and Them Bones. And I got so fucking tired of those songs.
Yeah.
Walking into the practice, and Tom at the time, he could do the helicopter noise on his guitar. And they were like, "All right, let's start." And that was the first thing they started playing was that. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, here we go." And I was like, I'm either going to puke or shit, or I'm going to nail this. And I mean, I had a blast, and they liked what I was doing. And they're, a couple jams later, they're like, "Hey, why don't you be our singer?" And I was like, I can do that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I really felt like, even after that first practice, like we had the lineup. It was just whether like, because at that time we were kind of kidding ourselves, like maybe we'll play gigs, maybe we won't. But, knowing myself, knowing Gary, knowing you for so long, of course we were going to play gigs. Of course we were going to make a run at it. But, I feel like it's the thing like musicians do. They try to kid each other like, no, we're not going to make a run at this. We're just going to keep it in the garage and have fun. And of course we're going to write some songs, and we're going to want people to hear them. So
yeah, well, it's funny because, you saying that, I thought as soon as we started to kind of get some stuff going, I was like, we're just going to fuck the world up with this stuff without a doubt. Like, we're going to come out, we're going to have some fun. And for me, like, what we were writing was so different than kind of what's in our local scene right now. And it's really different from a lot of stuff that's like on the radio. Like, you can't really catch like it's exactly like Stone Sour per se, or they hit this Pantera style perfect. It's like, you can't really catch it. It's kind of like Primus. There is no genre. It's just Primus.
I had a question for both you guys, just based on kind of setting the standard with those songs, both Audioslave and Alice in Chains. Were you guys classically taught, or were you learning off these songs, like how to play bass, how to sing? You said, Sean, that you didn't have any family that had any kind of musical background, so you're just learning by ear?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I started playing trumpet in like 6th grade, so I was learning, meters and measures and fortissimo and all that stuff. Like, I was learning to do the classical stuff, but singing never ever came into my thought process. Like, we had a chorus in school. Nope, no fucking way.
Yeah.
I thought I sounded like a dog in a blender. I was like, no, I can't sing. What are you talking about? And then like it just came like, I'm gonna sing, and it just worked out. I make good mouth noises.
Yeah, and myself, I'm not classically trained. I had a buddy in high school who was a bass player, my buddy Ben Lambert, who he took lessons at Carroll's Music, which was kind of the music school at the time in the Lewis and Auburn area, because I grew up in Turner, that had some great music teachers. And I honestly just kind of hung close to my buddy. And anytime we jam on the weekends, he would teach me some scales, teach me a few things. But I never myself had, the money for classes or stuff like that when I was a kid. And, no one in my family plays music. So it wasn't something that was like that, my parents could really understand and kind of support. So it was something that I had to kind of like sneak around and do almost, and I guess really that's it. I mean, I took a music tech and theory class in high school. I didn't take music in high school, so I didn't learn how to read. I can't read charts or anything, but I just really learned by ear, and I think I play what I think sounds good, and that's always kind of worked for me. So
Seth, you said that you this was like the band that you wanted to bring out those funky bass riffs and whatnot. So you post this on Facebook. Is there what was the pitch? Was it like, hey, funk metal band, or was there any direction? Because I've always wondered, like, when bands start, are there conversations that happen like, hey, you know, we want to sound like this or this, you know what I mean? Or does it just happen naturally?
Yeah, I think in my pitch, I said I want to play, you know, funky, heavy rock, or, you know, heavy rock that grooves, that kind of thing, knowing that, you know, whether we're coming from a blues influence like an Alice in Chains or Soundgarden, or if we're coming from a more, you know, funk influence like a Primus or a Faith No More, like all of those things I love. But I knew that, like, whenever you put, you know, 4 guys in a room, or, you know, you're always kind of getting the product of where those guys are all individually coming from. So, like, the cruel joke with bands trying to choose their own genre of the band that they're in, you almost never get to totally choose what you sound like, because everyone's coming from a different perspective. And, you know, I didn't know what we were going to come up with was going to sound the way it did. It just, I knew that I was going to play bass heavy riffs because that's what I love. And I didn't honestly at the time know what, you know, because Sean's other band is a bit heavier than Trawl. Sean does a lot more screaming in Devil's Night Out. So I didn't know if he would come in and want to do more, but he's actually like, no, I actually want to sing some more. I want to do, I wanted to make it a bit different so that, you know, the two bands are kind of, you know, yin and yang sort of thing. So no, I mean, other than the fact that we wanted to play, you know, funky, heavy rock, we didn't really know what it was going to sound like. So
that's almost more fun. I feel like just let it happen. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. We didn't want to steel dragon it and be like, it must be exactly this, like, fantasy metal, you know, to a T, like, you know,
in that voice.
Yeah.
And you can't do that, right? I mean, you can't just put yourself in that box from the start, because you don't know where any of your grooving, any of your jamming is going to take you. And like, oh, that's cool. Like, why don't we hang on to that? Oh, it doesn't fit what we want to do.
Right.
Yeah.
It's probably similar with the podcast. It is for us. Like, well, okay, we're not going to just talk about this one genre of music. We're going to jump all over the place because it's more fun that way. We don't know where we're going to go. Let's just go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, for us, like, writing the songs and stuff, it kind of starts out with, like, Seth will bring this bass line and it's just this crazy, I mean, we have one that's called the Trawlcast that we've been working on recently. It's basically a waltz with the funky bass line. So, you know, we just kind of take something and we start playing with it. And then, I mean, all of our musical influences are so spread out that we can kind of pick and choose from our influences to pull in this specific style or this texture. And then when we lay it down, we're like, yeah, that seems to work. And, you know, I mean, starting out, the funk metal thing wasn't even really in our minds. We kind of started with, let's just play some funky music that we feel good with. And then I think it was like our 5th or 6th practice after we'd finally, like, come together, like, we had a name, and then we're like, dude, we're funk metal. Like, fuck yeah.
I think it was also like, because I had never really used that term before this band or even really thought much about it, but I started, like, looking up, okay, all of these bands that I love, like, you know, Incubus is thrown into that category, you know, everyone from, like, Incubus to Mr. Bungle to, like, you know, some of the older stuff, like, you know, Suicidal Tendencies, or, like, I mean, Red Hot Chili Peppers, obviously, are thrown into this kind of maligned category of funk metal, which is, like, a really wide array of sound. And it was kind of an odd choice for us to be like, let's call ourselves a certain genre, because not every band does that. And it might be a setup. It might be kind of like, you know, maybe we shouldn't have done that. But from, like, a marketing perspective, I thought, well, let's maybe give people something to be sort of intrigued by, because you don't hear it every day. You're like, what the hell does funk metal sound like? I have to hear this now.
Right.
So if anything else, maybe it's just kind of a way to, like, throw something intriguing at people. But I also don't want it to pigeonhole us either, you know?
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there. It is something intriguing. And when I first kind of caught wind of you guys through Facebook posts and stuff like that, knowing Sean, I was like, that sounds interesting. Like I want to check that out just because of the naming, the name of the band, the branding, the funk metal. It's like this all sounds like stuff that I'm gonna like. So I should check this stuff out. So you guys were kind of not ahead of the game, but definitely thinking of that aspect when putting everything together. It's not just music. It's also, hey, how do we market ourselves to the world? And I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, just something to try to stand out above all the other hard rock that's out there, because hard rock is just like a very general, junk drawer of a genre where like so much can be called hard rock. Let's try to call it something that maybe people will go, oh, like I have to hear that.
Well, it's like that, the word metal too. There's you go to pop music and you have pop music. That's it. Well, when you hit metal, you have new metal, you have death metal, you have doom metal. There's 7,000 subgenres of metal, but no one ever goes into that funk metal because no one knows what it is. And we were just like, fuck it, that's what we're going with, because we're playing like Seth's bass lines are so funky that if you can't call it funk metal, then I don't know what you could call it.
You don't want to go too far and call it like shark metal. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, all right, what's going on? Like,
yeah,
like a Monomarth with the Viking metal. It's like it's a little shticky,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, the first song we ever recorded, we went to Halo Studios to record our first single, and it's called Carcharodon, and it's actually a song about a shark. It's a reggae funk metal song about a shark from the point of view of the shark. So if that helps, we were kind of going for the shark thing,
and it rips. The song's good. I mean,
yeah.
I've had the EP in my car now for a week plus. So
awesome.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff. And you're right. It's from the point of view of the shark, and yeah, it's cool. And it feels
right.
You guys lean into that sonically and vocally and lyrically. Like you're not. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's in your face, but it is there. You are thinking about it when you're listening to the music, whether it's be the bass line or the guitar riff, or you're like, oh man, this kind of feels like there's something around the corner that I should be a little scared of.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because when we first started writing that song, I think Tom was showing Seth like a Bob Marley riff, and it like he screwed it up a bunch, and then we were like, wait, what were you doing there? Do that again. And then once we started getting into it and I wrote all these lyrics, like we kind of tied the song together. And in practice, I'm sitting there, and when you're practicing as a band, you kind of face each other. And the first time we played it through without stopping, without altering stuff, I looked up and Seth had this shit-eating grin that was about 3 miles wide, dude. And I was like, oh my God. And we started playing it, and we did it again, and we did it a few more times. I came home and I went to my old lady and I was like, when we play live, watch Seth's face during this song. And she went, okay. The whole fucking lead up to the end, there's this shit-eating grin like, y'all don't know what you just got yourselves into, but you're gonna get hurt.
Because the song, it just, it feels like, there's like definitely like a surprise in the song that, like, if you've never heard our music before, at the 2.5 minutes in, the song takes a pretty sharp turn into being very heavy. So it just always, I almost kind of like think on stage, like this is obviously the shark attack part. So I have to kind of like embody that, show my teeth and just get into it, because like, it just makes you want to do that. So
it's cool to hear from the band's perspective, the way you guys are describing it, because we know it as like fans that don't play music, and we have that same grin when we get to that part in the song, the breakdown or whatever it is, and you're stoked, So to have it come from the songwriter's perspective, like I would be proud too. I mean, something you conceptualized and you're about to rip it live, and it came together in the perfect harmony. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's magical, and it's literally one of my favorite parts of any song. Is when you find that one sweet spot, and it's maybe a twist in the song, or maybe people aren't expecting that from your band, and then all of a sudden, like, you hit it on stage and people are like, oh shit, what was that? And you're like, yeah, you like that, don't you? Yes, you do.
that was one of those songs that, like, we couldn't have tried to write. Like, literally, I hit record I have like this little Zoom condenser mic that you can record, like a live band in a room with, just rolling. And like, like Sean said, we were trying to play Stir It Up by Bob Marley, and then we kind of got onto this jam where we were just jamming, and then literally we pretty much wrote the song just by jamming it all the way through without even talking about it. And then, you know, Sean had come up with the lyrics for it. So like, I don't think we could write a song like that again if we tried. It's just one of those things that happens when everyone's in the right mindset, when, you know, everyone's feeling a certain vibe or whatever. And
everyone had just recently watched Jaws together.
and if you don't, you know, like record that stuff, sometimes like the next day it's just gone. Like nobody can remember it. And it was like, oh, that was a cool jam we did. But unless you hit record, like it would be gone forever, you know?
I'm trying to think. So you guys started in 2018. The last year plus has been kind of a wash from a live music perspective. So were you guys playing out before COVID?
Yep. Yeah, we were. So, you know, we spent pretty much almost the majority of the rest of 2018 kind of writing, preparing. We ended up playing our first show at Empire in October of that year. And from there, you know, it was kind of off and running. So from, you know, end of 2018 through 2019 was our most, you know, busy and productive period. We played a bunch of shows all over New England, you know, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Maine. Really, you know, felt like we kind of came into our own as a live band and had a lot of fun. You know, recorded another song. We recorded Vertigo in that time frame, and you know, basically, was it probably December of 2019, just before we were like, oh, we'll take a little break, we'll do some recording. So, you know, 4 months before the pandemic started, we were like, oh, let's take a break for, you know, the brunt of the winter, just so that like we can, you know, sharpen our axes and do some recording and kind of get ready for the next phase of the band. And then all of a sudden, boom, pandemic. So we were completely shut down. So
yeah, we had a show. It was like March 20th, because that's my oldest son's birthday. We had a show at Gino's in Portland. Used to be called The Skinny. Was a porn theater.
Slanted floors.
Yeah. Still don't lick or touch anything on the walls, you know.
Pre-pandemic, don't do that.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, like post-pandemic, definitely. Well,
new ownership.
Yeah.
The Curies are putting a lot of you know, new stuff and money and effort into it. So I have a feeling it's going to come back strong. I feel like
that can be a cool place to see a show too, if the right crowd's there and the right band's there. So
oh yeah, we had a show set up, and then it was like like a week and a half, 2 weeks before, like we started to get the rumbles of this might not be the time to be playing shows. The CDC's saying some stuff, and like we kind of played it by ear, and it was like a week before, and it was like, nope, we got to cancel it. Yeah. It was like, all right, cool. And that was actually our farewell show for our guitarist Tom. He was actually stepping away, and it was going to be our last show for a bit until we found a new guitarist to come in. And it just so happened that the pandemic shut it down, and we had time to kind of step back, take a breath, you know, reconfigure what we wanted to do and who we wanted to be as a band. And then like we happened to fall in with our current guitarist, Justin.
Yeah. And Justin Patry, you know, he's been in many other bands in the past. He was in Athame, Left on the Outside, a few others. And, you know, we've been friends for years. Somebody that would always kind of reach out to us. And he was actually the first one to reach out to us to offer us a show. He had been to a few practices. It was almost like he was kind of, you know, in the band before, or, you know, he was definitely a friend of the band. So it was the most logical choice for us to be like, hey, Justin, do you want to actually, you know, be in this band? And so we were excited, but at the same time, you know, it's March of 2020, and we weren't able to really even get together in the same room until probably, I think, June was when we were able to, you know, kind of start practicing again. And, you know, in that time, I'll give Justin a lot of credit. Like he listened to all of our, you know, the songs that were recorded, but also a lot of demos that were just kind of haphazardly like, all right, here's an idea for this song or that song. He learned everything, and he came with like, I mean, so prepared, like so insanely prepared. So we were able to really just start jamming right away in June. So
yeah, I mean, we've talked about it on this podcast. There's going to be a lot of bands that don't come out of this pandemic. They just, you know, whatever stage they were at, they're not going to continue. So
yeah. It's very sad to see.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate because there's so many amazing acts, and a lot of people don't realize like their local scene may be the next scene that blows up big, like, you know, punk rock in the 80s with California, or like the early 2000s Western Massachusetts metalcore. Like, you don't know if your local scene is going to be that next hotbed. And with this pandemic going on, there's so many bands that are probably just going to shut down and call it quits because they can't do anything. They're not making the money they were, or, you know, they can't play shows until like 2030 because whatever reason. It's sad. And I hope these people that are, you know, in bands that are shutting down, I hope they find that drive again. And I really want to see them come back, whether it's just to continue or to come back with a bigger tenacity to just make music and make people happy and make people feel the emotions that they're putting into these songs, you know?
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, I think for us, you know, what helped is, you know, Justin coming in, we were able to show him our material and the idea of, you know, because we had to really shift things around from the way we were doing things before with, you know, going to Halo for the first 2 recordings. Obviously, not being a band who's playing gigs and making money, you have to think, okay, if we do want to release new material, if we do want to put stuff out, going to a traditional studio is not really an option. So luckily, you know, Justin is really adept at recording. He's been a recording engineer a long time and also has recorded some other bands in the local scene. So we decided, okay, well, why don't we do this? We'll just work on an EP and we'll hunker down. We'll record during the pandemic as long as, you know, we can, basically just once a week, you know, social distance, even flying some tracks around. Like I recorded some stuff at home, you know, we all, so it was a very, you know, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do on our own as a band with the resources that we have within the band. So, you know, is it Halo quality? Probably not, but I'm really proud of what we were able to do. And I feel like, you know, it's honest and it's, you know, I'm proud of what we were able to do with the resources we had within the band. So
it actually brought me to the next question. You basically answered it for me, but the Shark Pinata EP was recorded entirely during the pandemic from scratch.
Yeah.
We started that. Geez, I want to say like
August.
August. Okay.
Well, yeah. So in August, we thought we might still be able to play one show. So we were still kind of positioning ourselves to play live. And when that one show that we thought we would play in like September got canceled, we were like, you know what, we just got to pivot. And instead of thinking about being a live band right now, we just got to think about recording. So I think it was around then when we kind of changed our mindset, but it might not have been until like September we started working on it.
But it was definitely an experience that was interesting because, like Seth said, there was a few songs on the EP that I never saw anyone except for Justin because he was where we had to go record. So I'd go down to our jam spot in Biddeford and it would be him and I. And he's like, all right, this is the song the guys got done. Like, do it. And I'm like, okay. And I'd sit there and listen to the tracks. I'm like, guys did a great job. All right, I got to do something. I got to make some magic come from nothing because like at that point, I think we really hadn't been in a room together for a bit either.
Yeah.
And we had written a whole new song for the EP in the time that we got Justin into the band to the time we started recording. So it was like, we have a whole new song that I had to, you know, find exactly what I wanted to do vocally on. And it was odd at first, but then after a while we started to keep that, you know, like the social distancing in place. And, you know, we were working together as a team. And like Seth said, he did some bass lines at his house. And I think 1 or 2 of them are actually on the EP as they came from his house. Like they weren't even recorded in a studio. It was just him and his computer.
Ghost Pepper Cantina, that bass line was just done at my house. And I did scratch tracks for everything. And I always look at it like, because I've been more of a traditional studio guy where in the last 15 years, you know, I've only recorded at studios. So doing something at home that could actually make the album seems kind of scary because I'm like, it's definitely not going to be good enough to be on the album. I don't want to give it that precedence. But there was one bass line for Ghost Pepper that Justin was like, I don't know, man, I feel like this one just has it, and you could do it again if you wanted, but I like this one. So I was like, you know what? All right, let's keep it. So
yeah.
That's wild, doing stuff at home and having it make it on there. And I mean, honestly, I would not have known that without the story. So, it came out great. Just looking at it, I have it right here. Brought it up from the car.
Awesome. Nice.
The album art is awesome, both inside and out. How did that come about?
So everything besides the cover is all me. I designed and did all of the interior art and kind of the concept and design. The cover itself, I actually had commissioned. There's a really cool artist named Adam Handal from Indonesia. And he's a young kid, and he's got this cool style. It's like, I think if you were to look it up online, it would be considered like neo-expressionism. And it's kind of the idea of like using frantic lines and shapes and colors to create art in almost a way that's like, it seems messy, but it's expressive. It's very expressive. And I saw his artwork, and I was like, it would really fit the Shark Pinata concept, because I knew that if I asked him to draw me a shark, it would kind of come out with that vibe. And that's what happened. I honestly didn't even tell him what the album name was going to be called. I just knew that the colors that he used and like the way that his style was, it would just kind of come out that way. So it came out even better than I thought, because originally I was going to try to do something super literal with like a shark pinata hanging from something with somebody hitting it with a stick. And I had this whole idea. I wanted to make it kind of like Jaws, where, they catch that shark and like, there's like a license plate, like a Maine license plate, like a boot, like just all this random stuff like flying out of them, which might be cool for like a 20th anniversary reissue or something. But
yeah, save that idea. It's a good idea.
Yeah,
it could be for vinyl press, man. If you do a vinyl press, that could be.
Well, so that's the thing, is like, and it's something that we'd love to do too, but it wasn't in the cards this time around, money wise. But so we were delighted with how it came out as a CD, and it felt right. So we stuck with it.
Just a question off of that. Where did you find the artist? Just randomly, or?
On Instagram. Like, okay. I follow a ton of artists on Instagram, just because like I'm always looking for, kind of like up and coming artists that do commission work, because we're always looking for a single cover or this or that maybe, like I can do some stuff, but sometimes if I have a vision for something and I know it's not something I can really do myself, I'll commission somebody. The Carcharodon artwork for that single cover, this guy George Malonis from Greece did it, and I got lucky because I found him, and I was like, hey, can you do this single cover for us? And he was like, yeah, how's $30 sound? I was like, that's amazing. Yes, absolutely. Like, here's $30. And the next year he actually was doing tour posters for Tool's Fear Inoculum tour, some of those dates. And he just, like, I love finding an artist that like nobody knows about. And then like the next year, somebody's discovered them and they're blowing up. So I got lucky there. So I'm hoping that this guy who did the Shark Pinata artwork has the same trajectory, because he's really good. He's amazing. Yeah. And so I just love finding artists like that are really good, but they don't even know it themselves yet.
So I get the weekly Bull Moose newsletter. So Bull Moose, if you're not from the Maine area, it's we've talked about it on the podcast.
They've listened to us.
Yeah, you know what Bull Moose is. And it was a few weeks ago where you guys have been on the top sellers for a few weeks now, but there was one week where it was not just local, it was their whole stores, and it was like Kings of Leon, Black Sabbath reissue, Trawl, and I'm like, damn, that's awesome.
That was so unexpected.
Yeah, we've been on the top local list, the top 10 local list for 4 weeks straight now, as of this recording, and it was the very first week we made their top 9 list of everything sold of all their stores.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
What was really crazy is, Seth and I were mentioning to each other that we beat out the Pretty Reckless, who had worked with John Wyman of Halo Studios to make that amazing album, and we were like, yeah, fucking take that, man. We beat you.
Well, I mean,
it was a jest, because we love John Wyman and everything that the Halo Studios does. I mean, they're unbelievably good, but like seeing that we had broken their top 9 list, like we were all kind of like, whoa, what the fuck just happened? And then we've been on the top local list for 4 straight weeks, and we still don't know how the hell that happened.
Yeah, that was definitely unexpected. And, you know, one thing I would suggest to any local band is do a pre-order, because Bull Moose is awesome at, you know, sending you a link 2-3 weeks ahead of time, and you can accept orders up until release day and get people excited about it, because that's what worked for us. Honestly, we just, you know, got people psyched about it and said, hey, you know, it's $6.97, check it out. You know, we're doing it up physical still because we love physical, we love Bull Moose. And, you know, it kind of got you know, some polar opposite reaction. Some people were like, you guys are still making CDs, and other people are like, heck yeah, I love CDs. I love going to Bull Moose and the experience of going out and buying, you know, physical music. So, you know, regardless of the people who, you know, if streaming's your thing, and that's great, I love streaming too, but I still love, you know, physical music. I collect vinyl, and I know you guys do too. And, you know, so it just felt wrong to put out a new release and not celebrate it with a physical CD, at least. Maybe someday a vinyl if you know, we ever, my thought was, is if it proves itself, you know, if this proves itself and people actually like it and support it, then maybe we'll do the vinyl. I think a CD is a good litmus test for, all right, is this worthy of pressing on vinyl? Because I don't think, you know, it's one of those things where you want to make sure that it's a big investment, so you want to make sure people are up for that. But
totally.
And I've done it once before. I pressed one of my previous bands we did on vinyl, and it went well, but we literally sold the CD for a year to save up the money from selling the CD to go and buy the vinyl version of it, just to break even on, you know, being able to produce it and, you know, put it out there for people with like 4 color variants and all that. So it's definitely worth it. But it's a labor of love, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you're speaking our language with the going to the store and getting the CD, and you know, it's a local indie record store for us, all of us here, and we love that place, and have, you know, grew up in there, just walking the aisles and picking up CDs. This whole thing felt like a throwback to me. I remember going to Bull Moose to grab a CD. It was $6.97, which was, you know, like back in the day, 2000 or 2001. It was the same price. I was like, this is awesome. Can't wait to toss this in my CD player when I get back into my car. Like it's 1999. But at the same token, I got to have it in my hands, and I couldn't listen to it streaming. So this was perfect. I wanted to have it. Yeah.
And people were relieved when it came out on streaming. Obviously, we actually put 3 weeks in between the physical release date and the digital release date, just because we wanted to have that moment where just for a little bit, it's only available at the store. And it was really just kind of a nostalgia play, because we love it so much. And I feel like there was enough people. I'm glad. And I also feel like that because of the pandemic and live local shows not happening, that maybe we did better than we might have if shows were happening, because, you know, it gave, I guess, people a reason to go out and buy something local. So I feel like, you know, like you can give some credit to that. I think the timing was right too on trying to do something like that. So
I was going to say, going off of Seth's point, the doing it physical through Bull Moose, like you said, it's a labor of love. We all grew up with Bull Moose. I mean, it's one of my favorite stores to go to. Even if I don't buy anything, I'll just go in there and walk around and be like, yes, this is home. This is old school for me. And doing that, I think, also gave people, with him talking about shows, not everyone's going to be able to make it to shows. So, you know, if you have fans that are in like way, you know, 6 hours away from you, they're not going to come down to see your show. So being able to put it out on, you know, in their stores and online through their stores, like we had people purchasing it in, I want to say like Arizona and like awesome. All over the country. People were able to like, oh, that's my home store. And, oh, I know Seth or I know Sean, so I'm going to purchase a copy. And then like we were getting pictures from everywhere of people, you know, holding up their Trawl Shark Pinata, you know, CDs. And it was like, that's what we wanted to do. Like, yeah, digital's fun and all. You can play anything on digital, but that physical, it's that touch, the opening of the CD, and you're like, there's that smell of this, the freshly printed paper, and it's just a different animal than turning on your phone and you smell your ear cheese, and you're like, oh, all right, let's put on some Terra for
we're laughing because we've said that same exact thing in this
so many times.
It's true. It's it really is. I mean, it seems, some people can't understand, but like there really is something to it. Like I don't know, it just didn't feel, and I think it is like a little bit of a celebration too, because if you don't put it out physically, in my mind, like I just feel like it's not actually, I mean, yes, you can release it on Spotify, it's out there, but even and still it's proven. I know that you guys just recently posted about Amoeba just reopening.
Yep.
A line of people waiting outside to get into a physical record store, and I wait in line every record store day to get in and get, people still want that, and regardless of the opposing sides, like there's still definitely a demand. All major artists are still pressing physical music, and I think there's something to be said about that.
The one CD that we talk about is Rage Against the Machine's Battle of LA. Smells like baseball cards.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely.
It must be
Absolutely.
the paper.
It's the paper. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. It's like the matte finish, the really thick matte finish. Yeah.
Exactly. Man, you're a nerd. We're all nerds here.
Yes.
Fit right in.
Perfect.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say, and you described it so well with the physical copy, is it's kind of a good placeholder on how many people are going out of their way that much to buy the physical copy, and how can you can use those metrics on who's going to show up to the concerts, to the live shows. Even if it's 25% of that, you can kind of gauge your local tours, maybe the tour goes all the way to, you said someone in Arizona posting photos, whether it was a friend or not,
Yeah.
Best advertising is word of mouth, right? So
yeah,
it's true. Yeah. And the other thing too, is I think, it created a little bit of a community aspect of, I wanted to create the album, show us your Shark Pinata CD, and people post a picture of them with it. And you guys, thank you very much for posting that video, because I think, things like that, it just kind of spreads a little bit like wildfire when someone sees, a smile on somebody's face holding this physical thing that's, a band that they like, it's kind of contagious and it spreads. And even if they only go and listen to it on Spotify, like it's that much more of an impact. So, yeah.
That reel did really well for us. We're closing in on 3,000 views on that thing, which is kind of crazy to me.
That's amazing. Wow. Oh my God. That's crazy. Yeah.
So let's pivot. You guys are podcasters. We're podcasters.
Yeah.
How did the Trawlcast come about? How did you guys decide that was something you wanted to do? Obviously, pandemic probably played a little into it, but you're doing that too.
Yeah. It was actually funny. Seth and I, kind of just being geeks that we were talking at practice about podcasts and some of our favorite podcasts to listen to at the time, and we were just kind of talking about what we like to listen to, and something that helps pass the day, or maybe it's just something to just start a conversation with friends, like, hey, did you hear this? What do you think about this? And like kind of just going to shows. Like I would ride with Seth, or him and I would be at the venue and just talking about stuff, and it would kind of trail back to the podcast. And we finally, after like a year and a half or so, we're like, you know what, we can't play any shows, we're not practicing right now. I still want to talk to Seth, so let's start a podcast and actually talk. And so far we're in our second season. We release bi-weekly, and pretty much we do a lot of interviews with the local bands around the state of Maine right now. We are going to be branching out though soon. We'll be having you guys on pretty soon to just kind of do a home and home and talk. And I mean, it's just a good way to keep connected with our fans and our friends. And also, like Seth and I, like there was pretty long spurts there where we just didn't see each other. We weren't practicing. we weren't doing anything. So being able to talk with one of my good friends really helps with like the pandemic blues that everyone gets. And like I said, I before we started recording, I've been burning through you guys' back catalog, and it's really good to hear three friends get together and just talk, whether it's about anything or literally fucking nothing. You're still talking and connecting and still feeling like you're there and alive. And that's exactly what Seth and I wanted to do, was start something to not only just keep talking with each other, but to have some fun, and then like get people talking and get people excited about anything. I mean, we've done shows about what we're currently listening to. We've talked about some of our favorite movies in certain genres. Like I said, we've done a ton of interviews with local bands of really most genres. I mean, it's mostly heavier stuff because we're kind of in that scene, but we're going to be soon branching out with other things. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have the Face Melter on to talk about his
nice
times. It's funny because I just listened to the Rob Riccatelli episode, and I was like, no shit. And I happened to, like, the day before that, I hit up Face Melter to come on our show, and I was like, man, this is great. And it's same thing. Like, I met Face Melter through playing music. He came to my shows and was hanging out and talking, and he saw my other band play, and like, he's interviewed me a few times. And there was one point where he came up to me, we were talking, and he's like, hey, do you got my number? And I was like, no. And he goes, here's my cell phone number. And like, I was like, okay. And I went over to my girlfriend and I'm like, look what I got. And she goes, oh shit. And I was like, yeah, I got the Face Melter's number. Like, I was all super giddy, like a 5-year-old. I was like, oh my God. And I actually had to explain it to my son the other day, like why the Face Melter is so huge and why I was acting like an idiot when I got his phone number. So, because my son's 16 years old. He doesn't even know. If it's not Minecraft or Xbox, he doesn't know.
For those of you who don't know, the Face Melter was on our local rock radio station, alternative rock radio station, WCYY, which we our episode 17 guest also on there for a very long time. He's Nate and I have met him a few times, hung out with him a few times at different concerts over the years too, through Rob, obviously, for Rob's being one of our close friends. So yeah, Face Melter's cool. He's rock royalty around here.
He absolutely is. And having his phone number in my phone, it was one of those cream your pants moments. I was like, oh, like I look through my phone and I see Face Melter. I'm like, oh my God, like I have his phone number. And I mean, I know he's doing internet radio now. He's part of the Rock Rage radio group, and he still does a radio show and goes to concerts and venues when they're happening and does interviews with big bands. And then he also hits up like a lot of local bands and small time bands, because he knows that these big bands like Trivium and Atreyu and, you know, Slayer, they all started somewhere. And it's these little weird pockets of these dirty bars where these guys are, maybe they all get up at 5 a.m. to go to work, but that night it's a different animal on that stage. And, you know, Steve, he may be a, you know, manager of a bank, but tonight he's a fucking amazing drummer and you're going to watch him play. So
had you guys done anything like that? Like, radio or anything like that in the past? Like, Sean, you obviously kind of grew up in front of a mic, so you're probably versed in it, but was this just a new territory for you guys with the podcast?
Yeah. I've never done anything like this, and this was literally Seth and I. Like, having a microphone in your face is one thing, and being on stage is a totally different animal too, but being behind a podcast, you know, rig and trying to interview somebody and not sound like a total dumbass, totally different animal.
Been there.
Yeah, I'd say you guys feel that pain. It's you don't want to stick your foot too far in your mouth, but maybe you want to taste your toes a little bit. Like, you kind of want to push the envelope, because if you do, you might get a great response out, and you also may get like, fuck you, and that's the end of the end of the recording. Like, and then these guys never talk to you again. You're like, I'm sorry.
I had Scott Russo to tell me that I dissed him. I was like, oh shit. Like the third interview we ever did. He's like, that sounds like a diss, man. I was like, no, man, don't leave.
He's like, oh, man. I'm just kidding.
He was just fucking.
I heard you like trying to like backpedal a little bit. No, man, I was serious. He's like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. I mean, so far we haven't had that issue with any of our guests. Most of our guests have been, you know, friends of ours or local bands that, you know, maybe they're not pushing anything, but they just want to talk. And it's good. It's good for us because we get to, connect with these guys a little bit more. One of my favorite episodes in, recent memory is the one we just did a couple weeks ago with a band called Twin Grizzly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, super phenomenal musicians and some of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And they're brothers. Like when you hear them talk about the music and the band, it's not a business adventure and it's not like this thing we have to do. They're literally friends. Like they go to each other's kids' birthdays, they hang out, they do everything together, and it's a family instead of okay, Seth's my bass player and that's all he, like, no, like they have this family atmosphere. And I think with Trawl, we're kind of the same way where we hang out, we talk, we all know each other's families. I mean, Seth can come over to my house anytime and steal some of my vinyl, or I've given DVDs off my friggin' rack. Like, dude, check this movie out. And like, we talk and hang out as much as we can safely.
Definitely. And yeah, to circle back to, your question, well, both of them really, with the podcast, this was, totally new for me. I had done radio interviews in the past with previous bands, and honestly, not very well. I've never been very good at radio interviews, and I've always been the one, like the traditional bass player, in the sense of like, I'm never really on the mic. I'm like the guy that says like, thanks everybody, and like, at the end of the interview, and like, peace out. Like, so, but I feel like I have so much to say. It's just all up here. And like, I had to get to a point of comfort with, and Sean definitely helped me, just like, hey, we're just having a conversation. Like when we do them, we don't even really share cameras. We just like, just have like almost like a phone conversation really. And it got to the point where it's like, now I'm comfortable enough to really share everything that I've got. But like, for me, it's honestly helped me to be able to do that, to express myself that way, because I've always been kind of the silent guy that like does all the marketing, does like books the shows and like does all that kind of stuff, and like plays my instrument, but don't ask me to say anything in front of anybody. So I've kind of come out of my shell a little bit in that respect, which I'm, really glad for. I mean, the podcast has definitely helped me do that. And, going back to the podcast, like it's helped me to like share some of my story, but, it was kind of unexpected or just not thought through that. Like once we started having guests, people could really tell their story too. And especially now, especially during the pandemic, I feel like it's sort of helping everybody, us, the people we have on the podcast, to kind of feel a little bit better about right now, about these times, and feel like, you're connected again. You're connected with people. And even though we're not in the same room, we're all, still like all of the things we've done in our lives, and all of the great moments and the cool concerts we've been to, and all the music, and all the fun, stories, they're all still there. It's just they're, it's going to be a little bit before we can all, do those things again. So I think it's helped to keep some of that alive in a respect, Yeah,
I think the timing for both your podcast, our podcast, everything, is the fact that everything kind of went on pause, right? So it's like it gave us an opportunity to kind of geek out, like you said, hang out as if we were on the phone or at a concert, even better, right? Like hanging out and geeking out on the things we talk about. But now that things are quasi getting better, we always wonder, like, we're all scrambling, we all have our professional careers or whatever. Is it hard to balance? I mean, you guys have a third element, which is the band. You get the podcast, the band, and your career. Is that a hard thing to balance for you guys? Or?
Not too bad, really. I mean, by day, I'm a vice president of marketing at an insurance agency, so it's a busy job. But the good news is I get to work from home. So especially these days, and so after 4:00 every day, I can be whoever I want to be. I can be the bass player for Trawl, and I can do this podcast thing with Sean, and that's fun. And any side projects or things, I'm always working on something. I feel like, I don't know, if I'm standing still too long or not, if I don't have enough to work on, like I feel like my creativity or expression of being able to be creative is tied to like personal happiness. So if I'm busy doing creative stuff, outside of my job, it gives me that secondary thing to think about where I'm not thinking about the day to day, or, you know, I always want to take care of my responsibilities, of course. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking about that you know, podcast we're doing coming up next week, or I'm thinking about the song we're currently writing, or
every day, right?
Yeah. So
it's funny, the marketing aspect that makes sense, and also you not wanting to sit still. Sharks don't like that either, right? So you guys, you gotta keep moving, man.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a bit different for me because I'm a warehouse manager for a flooring company, and that's my 7 to 3:30 job. So I'm out fairly early in the day. But then I have the podcast. I have 2 bands that I'm a singer in, and I also have my family life, which is 2 children and my lovely lady. And it's a bit of a juggle, but if I take a moment and take a breath, like I know, tonight I'm recording this with you guys. Tomorrow night is trawl practice. Thursday night is, basically family time. I'm going to sit down, eat shitty pizza with my kids and my girlfriend and, hang out. And then Friday night, it depends on my work, but, Friday night, I may end up going to my other band, Devil's Night Out. I may practice with them, or I may have the night off because they can't do practice. Usually the weekends, normally when there's no pandemic, the weekends are for shows. So we kind of set up, for me, it's a juggling act because I have Trawl or Devil's Night Out. And it's like, well, I'm playing a show Thursday with there, but I can do Saturday over here with you guys, or you know what, I've already got a show booked, so I can't do this one. But it's, as long as I'm focused and paying attention, I don't fuck up too bad. I think. I want to hope so. Well, my old lady hasn't killed me, and I've been doing a 2-band thing for 3 years now, essentially. So, but yeah, it's like Seth's saying, it keeps, if you keep moving and you keep your head kind of clean, you can get right to the, all the tasks. I mean, Trawl's doing fantastic. The podcast, we're having way too much fun doing. And then, just other stuff in life is fun too, because you got to find time for those things. If you don't, you're kind of losing hope in the situation, and that's what you can't do. You got to keep hope no matter what. I mean, it could be we're in a pandemic. For the last 18 months or so, 16 months, we've just been in the shit. And now it's time to start digging our way out, taking those breaths of fresh air and saying, I'm going to be better this time around, or I'm going to do good, or I'm going to survive this no matter what, because the last year of my life has been absolute fucking shit. I got to change me. I got to change my surroundings. I got to better my family's situation, stuff like that. So
EP's out. As we said, it's done great. The world looks to be opening up. I mean, we're seeing big festivals announced. So what's next for you guys on the music side, on the Trawl side?
It's a good question.
I know.
Yeah, it's a good question. So, well, we're working on a couple more songs that we have been writing for the past couple of months, but I don't think we'll dive right back into recording quite yet. I'm hoping that we can do some maybe like outdoor shows this summer. And I think it's going to kind of depend on if anyone's producing shows that I feel that we can trust, that is kind of putting things together the right way, and they're thinking about, the important stuff and the guidelines and making sure people stay safe, because we don't really want to play a bunch of like, barnyard, like super spreader parties, like everyone pile in, like, we don't want to do like some unsanctioned, like terrible backyard party or that kind of stuff. But like, we'd love to do something outdoor, this summer, if it was like obviously done right. I think that's the thing is, but we'll have to see what happens. I mean, if they do like limited capacity, smaller venues with like, 30, 40 people or something spread out, and, maybe that's possible. I don't know. So I think right now, as a local band, we're kind of waiting for, I guess, some of the outlets. And I know you guys had like Lauren Wayne on recently, talking about their perspective from like the State Theater. And, there's some smaller venues that are, obviously kind of in that boat where they're like, okay, well, you know, when's the time when we can start trying to do something? Like, I feel like we're probably going to take the lead from the people we trust, as far as if they're putting together something worthwhile and safe, then we'll jump on it. But I don't really personally want to be like that band that just like goes in way too early, way too heavy handed, and just like plays a bunch of stuff that, you know, people are going to get sick at. So
yeah, we don't want to be the band that's known to kill your grandmother.
Yeah.
So pretty much the nicest way I could put it.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, of course, we want to get back out there and play shows. Like we're so excited to like for people to hear the stuff that we just recorded live, and like we'd love to do that. But I feel like, you know, the responsibility aspect of, you know, being in solidarity with our peers, as, you know, with other bands in the area, and like what we've all kind of decided as like what, you know, what's safe, what's acceptable. We want to make sure that like we're good team players too. Like, you know, we're all kind of a symbiotic scene, you know, other bands that we play with, we can't really put on bills ourselves as a club band. We need two or three other bands to play with. And, you know, we gotta do things right, and like, you know, keep relationships happy, and you know, do the best we can, you know.
I thought you were going somewhere completely different after I said, we don't want to kill your grandmother. And then you're like, but, and I'm like, whoa, dude.
But actually, no.
We want to murder her. Like, shit.
No.
Cool. Well, we really appreciate you guys coming on tonight. A lot of fun catching up with you, Sean. I haven't seen you in years, so it's been great.
I know,
and
man.
Seth, nice to meet you, man.
So nice to meet you. So nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having us come on, and we're excited to have you guys on our podcast to kind of do the reverse. And actually, we were talking before we started the recording. I had a couple of funny stories about a couple of your episodes, you know, burning through your back catalog. I got notes here. Hold on. I actually got notes.
Ooh.
Nice.
So episode 20. Yeah, episode 20. You guys were talking about it's not Band Vantage. It's Bandicaps. There you go. And you mentioned the band Goat Whore. I have a friend who was in a band with me many years ago, and he ended up becoming a talent buyer in the state, and he hired Goat Whore to play a little club here called the Big Easy. And I was their roadie, and I got to work for them. And the sad part, I didn't even get paid. That sucked. But I got into the show for free, and the band gave me some merch for free. So I actually had a Goat Whore shirt. It's actually still in my closet right now. But funny story, that night, this random dude came up to, I think it was the guitarist, and gave the guy a live fucking lobster in a paper bag and was like, "It's from Maine, bro. Here you go." And he was like, "Thanks." And he looks at me and he goes, "What the fuck am I supposed to do with this?" And I was like, "That ain't my problem, bud." Like, nope. And I freaking walked away and came back, and they were all talking about it when I came back. And I was like, dude, the harbor, like the dock is right there. Just go throw it in the fucking water. And they did. Like, I watched them, like they followed my vehicle at the time, drove up to the dock, and I watched them park, get out, and friggin' like boomerang a fucking lobster into friggin' Casco Bay Harbor.
They liberated it.
Yeah, they friggin' took the bands off and friggin' yeeted them into the friggin' bay. I was like, all right, cool, guys, thanks.
So when we started this podcast, I never thought we'd have a roadie for Goat Whore on.
Me either, yeah.
Well, and it's funny because I'm burning through the back catalog, and I've heard Tony, my old homie here, talking Head PE a ton.
Oh, yeah.
My other band actually opened for Dope and Head PE down in Manchester, New Hampshire a couple years ago. We were like direct support. So it was really cool. We got to meet what is the band minus Jared. He was kind of in the tour bus doing that explicit stuff that we don't talk about, you know, now we can, you know. But yeah, I got to open for them, which is really cool. So but that's all. And that's all the notes I have for now. We'll get back to
for
it
now. Maybe we'll do this again next week. Who knows, right?
Hey, well, you guys will be on our podcast, and we'll have more stuff to talk about. And you know,
awesome. Well, we appreciate it.
Sweet.
This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having us on.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much. Well, those were the guys from Trawl. Super nice guys, and awesome to have them on. Tone, good call on getting some local guys on the podcast. love their music. They also do a podcast. We can kind of relate with them on that whole angle. And yeah, some deep nerdery on their come up, their music scene. I feel like we would have been friends. Obviously, we kind of have similar tastes, kind of ranging from hip hop to country to rock to metal. So I love it, man. I love the nerdery, and the Maine connection obviously hits home even more.
Yeah, and I think for me, this whole them coming on the podcast was just meant to be. It was. It's funny just how things work themselves out and how we kind of found each other. And of course, you listen to the podcast. Tony's known Sean for almost 20 years, but the fact that it reconnected 20 years later, like, it was meant to be. And I think if you've listened to our podcast, you'll definitely love their podcast because it's an alternate version of us, which is always fun. And you don't always get that when you have guests. You know what I mean? We clicked, and I think it comes through in the episode.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, we talked with them for quite some time before and after, which was fun. Catching up with Sean, for me, I haven't seen him or talked to him in years, and for the organic way that this all came about is wild to me. Like, Seth found us. Sean didn't find us. Seth found us. Listened to a couple episodes, DM'd us, and then I kind of realized. I remember texting you guys. I think I know. That's Seth from Trawl. I know Sean. I know their front man. I worked with him at a shoe store when we were teenagers. I was like, I'm just going to say, hey, yeah, tell Sean I said hi. Tell Sean Tony from Sports Shoes says hi. And he was like, whoa, that was just crazy to me. Like, that's how we ended up, on each other's radar. And then we turned it into, this hour and a half conversation, and maybe another one next week. Who knows, right? I mean, we like talking to those guys, so that could happen again.
Yeah, he actually said that in post, that he didn't know there was any like Maine connection. Right. Mm-hmm. Which I thought was interesting. It's like, oh, wow, this is like an organic listen, like an organic fan or whatever you want to say. Like, we're fans of their band. But like you said, the fact that it came together is really cool. And even like post, like we were talking for like probably another 45 minutes after show, just like geeking out on all the things that we have in common. And I think that's a silver lining of COVID-19 is the fact that like, hey, we can't go to shows and all hang out. So these are like conversations that could have been, right. And so we're kind of geeking out on podcasts, their podcast, our podcast, like, what we would have done had things been quote unquote normal.
Well, Tony, you nailed it. Like, it was organic how it happened. And like, if you didn't put that in that last DM response, none of this would have happened. And that's why, like, whenever we think of, guests or whatnot, it's like, you just never know. Just like, we always say shoot or shoot. Like, you never know what's going to happen with a comment you leave or a post you make or something you say in the podcast that someone happens to listen to. I don't know. For me, it lends itself to just asking, you know what I mean? Or making that comment or making that connection, because you never know what's going to happen. Yeah,
you don't get anywhere not doing it.
Right.
It's way better. Your likelihood of hitting that shot, as Michael Scott would say, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Your likelihood of hitting that shot goes down immensely when you don't actually take the shot. So even just, hey, answering the DM to the point where it turns into a full-on episode of a podcast with guys who we think are talented, who just put out a new EP, and yeah, we know them a little bit, but before that, just checking out the music and being music fans and being down with the Portland, Maine scene and the funk scene, the metal scene. Yeah, like I want to talk to those people all day, whether or not I knew them in a past life. It's fun how that obviously added a little layer to it, but I would have liked to talk to those guys either way, and the fact that they're kindred nerds like we are. Hell yeah, I'm all the more into it.
Oh, so true. I mean, I never told you guys this, but for the longest time in my phone calendar, I always put like things I want to do or nerd-wise, like shows I want to see. Even if I don't have tickets for it, I'll just put it on the date of the calendar, so I keep seeing it. I'm like, eventually, almost like a vision board, I guess you'd say. So for a while, I had public speaking in there because I knew that it was going to benefit my career if I did so. And so when this podcast kind of came to fruition, I was like, nice, this is checking that box. And like we were talking off air with those guys, like, man, like it's rough. Sometimes you're just eating your foot or, putting your foot in your mouth and just kind of going with it. But it's like, well, shit, you got to learn somehow, right? So yeah, like you said, like getting those guys on talking and just kind of relating on even just the fact that we're both running podcasts, kind of not really knowing what we're doing, but learning as we go and getting better and more comfortable as things progress is awesome. And the fact that from Maine, obviously there's, we have our own little way of growing up and things that we're used to. So it's very relatable. But the podcasting in particular is fascinating because it's just, there's so many dynamics on running a podcast and hearing their side of things. And then we try to relate it to like music, like we're like a band and this is our podcast, this is our show, but they are a band, you know, and they have that other dynamic and little tidbits that we learned, like the whole Bull Moose pre-order thing. Like we always wondered like, oh, the CDs that come out, major label, Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory, like you get it at Bull Moose first, week of the release, it's like $6.97. It's like, oh, it's a great deal. We had no idea that was like a pre-order from Bull Moose to get that on the cheap. That's kind of cool.
Super fun conversation. We hope all our listeners liked it. If you want to check Trawl out online, they are at, if you're on Instagram, they're at Trawl Band, TRAWL. Obviously, we'll link it in all the show notes and everything like that. Their new EP is called Shark Pinata. And if you can actually order it online, like we said in the episode off Bull Moose, check them out. And the Trawlcast, it's out, I think, on all platforms. You can get the Trawlcast, and it's conversations that they have, just the two of them. They have bands and musicians on. So if you like us, you're gonna like them. So check that out. Anything else, guys? Or we want to fade into the song?
We can fade into the song, but hey, maybe listen to their episode here coming up soon. You might hear some familiar voices. You might hear some people you know.
It's
I'm
true.
just gonna tease that a little bit. Maybe we're gonna put the shoe on the other foot for once.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a lot of fun. So with that said, we're gonna fade out to a new song off Trawl's new EP. EP, like we said, is called Shark Pinata. Maine funk metal. Appreciate it. Thanks for checking us out. See you next week.
Peace, podheads.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.